So it's official. I'm being transferred to my GP in order to get my meds, but I won't have mental health system support, which kind of sucks because I was hoping they'd help me find a place to live when I get back from California. Sometimes they have rent subsidies that can really help, and I won't have access to that. So I think the universe is telling me it's time to go it alone. And at the same time, I am signed up for some free counseling through community services. So it seems like I'm not having this strong support for bipolar, but now it's moving into dealing with PTSD. And last night I didn't have the greatest sleep. Last night I took a quarter trazodone and I took 3 quetiapine instead of 2. I thought, since this is usually the time when I have to up quetiapine, that I could try to up it. And I didn't have the greatest sleep. Like, I had dreams that I remembered and it felt like I was half asleep half the night. But I did sleep, I think, 10 hours, so I must have slept. It just felt like I didn't. When I woke up, I was trying to go back to sleep, but I would just sort of go into these dreams, but I still felt like I was awake. And my legs felt really restless, maybe because I dipped them in the ocean and let them go numb yesterday. So then I got up and I went for a run, and I never do that. I just did a bit of running up and down the street. And then after, I did a bit of rollerblading up and down the street. And so, I don't know, feeling the urge to be active. I don't want to say, like I've said in the past, oh, I'm going to do this, because I forget. Like, part of the problem with this type of brain is that one can't really form habits. So, because one forgets. So then, as soon as one tries to think, well, I'll do this every day, next day one wakes up and forgets all about it. It's like starting from scratch every day, in a way. And then knowing generally how to take care of oneself at a certain point, like how to shower and feed oneself. But other than that, there's no real pattern. And being okay with that. And yeah, so right now though, today I do feel a little bit better. So maybe taking a bit more quetiapine is good. Because I don't really like that body pain, because it makes my body painful. So I might try acupuncture when I go back. We'll see. It's kind of expensive, but I'm thinking that I need to put more resources into this again. Before all this started happening, like the worst part, 2 years ago, before I started talking to myself, I did take care of my body really well and spent a lot of money on body therapies and things, and I was working more. But now, not so much. And I kind of had an insight that there's no self, but a lot of what happens is a result of what we eat. I don't know, a lot of the stuff that's gone wrong in my life is when I was drinking. So that changed consciousness, and that changed what manifested in my experience, and it wasn't necessarily good. So maybe by going back to eating lots of healthy food again, that could help. Because then my body will feel good. It'll feel safe and nourished. Right now it doesn't feel that. It feels kind of agitated. So We'll see. We will see. I went for another walk through the forest and I got attacked by a dog. So this dog thing keeps happening. And it was jumping on me and trying to bite me. It didn't look like it was fully grown. And it was off leash. And I just said to the guy, I said, "Excuse me, can you please call your dog?" And then he called the dog, but the dog didn't come. It just continued to attack me. And then he was kind of a slow-moving older gentleman, so finally he got to the dog and then said sit, and the dog listened finally after jumping on me about 3 or 4 times and trying to bite my elbow. Luckily I'm wearing a sweater. And I think maybe because I didn't react with fear, it didn't get super aggressive. I think if I would have been afraid, my heart didn't even race. But I did definitely respond and request that I didn't really want the dog attacking me. And then after I said, you should keep your dog on a leash. Dogs are unpredictable. And then I said, just because you think it's cute doesn't mean that, I don't know what I said. But point being, I don't know, then it makes me feel like I shouldn't even go outside. I checked the spire. It didn't make me breathe tense or anything. It wasn't, I don't know, I feel like the universe is testing me to see how I react to being attacked. Because, for example, if I wrote a book on what I'm having insight into, I probably would be attacked and maybe killed, so yeah, I don't know what the message is from the universe. Could be, oh, dogs can smell evil, and yeah, there's definitely evil inside me. There has been in the past. Everyone has it. Just give people the right situation. But I think that's the point, is I'm supposed to learn how to be neutral about attack coming at me, apparently. So the dogs are helping me out with this, because I felt pretty neutral about it. And I was walking and I was letting my mind just wander about all this consciousness stuff and crisis in consciousness and stuff that I've been writing down but not necessarily talking about. I've been writing a lot down but not talking about it. So I don't know if I'm supposed to write something, but sort of pondering that stuff, and I was pondering unconditional love at that point. Unconditional love no matter what, actually unconditional love for children, and wondering if people learning how to absorb the conflict into emptiness. I was thinking about how the fear of fear is the problem, not necessarily fear. And the fear of fear is the self. So the self isn't necessarily that experience and consciousness of fear, but the fear of that fear is the self, and the self is that which would want to try to do something about it, to stop it and get away from it and escape. So the self is the escape from the actual phenomena. But when we get acquainted with the actual phenomena and observe it and allow it to flower and die in silence, then I think we transmute something, because we don't allow that fear to turn into human bodily action. I was thinking about Rupert Sheldrake's concept of the morphogenetic field, and how that's sort of like a pattern that would pattern us into certain behaviors. And I feel that in consciousness, these patterns can come in, or these crises, and then we'll want to act them out. But I think that it's possible to absorb those patterns into silence and actually silence the morphogenetic field that would have us behave in habits and patterns. And then what that would turn into is the morphogenetic field would now be the epigenetic matrix. So instead of us being patterned by these patterns in consciousness that we all share and then reacting out these dramas and traumas based on that, we move into silence, absorb that, and then speak in a dialogical way. So instead of being moved by the morphogenetic field, we're moved through the epigenetic matrix and through our gestures of love and kindness towards the patterns that would program us to act out things that we would rather not. Absorbing it into silence. And then once it goes, we have the power to move about how we want, or in the epigenetic matrix, as opposed to patterned by the morphogenetic field. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but so I think we can absorb the morphogenetic field. And that would change it. So it could be some of our jobs to absorb these patterns. And that's sort of how I've talked about learning how to be with the extreme states of consciousness that come into consciousness and not turn it into, oh, I gotta call 911 because I'm having a psychosis. That takes a lot of practice, and it's not something I'm saying that everybody can do. And it's probably not something that everybody needs to do. Just some people who are able to work towards that. And I don't know if it's right either. I really don't know. Don't know what this is all about. But I was reading a couple chapters in Dr. David Hawkins' book, Healing and Recovery. I was reading the chapters on pain and suffering and also fear. And he describes this process that I've been doing. And it's interesting because he talks about how if there's a certain something that arises in consciousness, say fear, he talks about how it's the fear of fear. And that's what I've been talking about with myself. So if there's fear arising, or what we imagine is fear, not that we're imagining it, but that's what we're categorizing it as. If we stay with that with neutrality, on his scale of consciousness, that's the level of 200, whereas fear is 130, I think. So how we receive that which arises in consciousness is really important. And we're not that which arises in consciousness, but we're the witnessing presence, and that is what matters, where the level of consciousness is, because that's how we'll move based on that information. So one can be in a state of fear and observe it maybe with unconditional love. I've been able to be with it with neutrality. Maybe, I don't know, unconditional love would be different. And then how does one resolve this crisis in consciousness? And I think this is part of where the non-doing comes in, because these states will arise, these fearful states, but there's nothing we can do about it. It's when we try to do something that we get into trouble. Yesterday I had that body pain, and I couldn't fall asleep without taking half a Zopiclone on top of the trazodone, half a trazodone, and I went back down to 2 Seroquel, and I fell asleep and I slept a long time. And then today I had that body pain again, and it feels like burning, but since yesterday it felt kind of like mentholy heat being released from my body. And then I was inquiring into the pain, and at one point I realized that it wasn't my pain, it was pain, which is not a personal phenomenon. So by realizing it was pain, I lost some identification with it and was more curious about the experience. And it was there, and it was uncomfortable. And then I was listening to classical music today and doing some writing. I signed up for a 3-month Spotify trial because I know nothing about classical music, and the idea of the healing power of sound is important, especially because I hear that sound all the time. And then today, all of a sudden I realized when I was listening to that music that I couldn't hear the sound, the Schumann resonance, that vibration. And then I took out my headphones and I still couldn't hear the sound, and everything felt really silent. And then I realized that I could really feel my heart beating, like the lub-dub. And it was strange because before that I've experienced my heart as not beating probably for the last year. I've experienced it more as moving in a circle. So in it moving in the circle, it's not beating because the beat is in the stationariness and the boom. So that was moving me in a circle, and I even recorded that at some point. And then I realized I started to feel my heart beat that way yesterday. It was like I could really feel it beating, and I haven't been able to feel it beating. And then today I was feeling it beating, and I was enjoying that sensation. It was like feeling my heartbeat for the first time, each time it beats. And it was very calming to be able to feel my own heartbeat. And then I realized that started yesterday. And then I realized that I'm no longer moving in a circle. Usually I can feel it moving side to side, but I realized that I can feel the circle just a little bit up here between my eyebrows. And it's a very small circle, so it doesn't really move me in the same way because the heartbeat is quite a large circle. And so it moves me from side to side, and it's quite strange. So then I'm wondering if my mind is sort of reintegrated with my body. And I don't know, I don't want to jump to conclusions. It feels really peaceful and calm, and the pain is gone. And That being said, I am still taking some medication, and I don't necessarily plan on tapering off of it at this moment. But I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, maybe it can help with the process. And plus, energy is stronger than matter, so using material meds sort of slows things down, but it doesn't change things. The change happens in consciousness. Just like somebody can take a street drug every day, it's not going to fix the problem. But one could take a street drug every day and then in the background be working to fix the problem, and then eventually the problem is fixed, and then maybe at some point one realizes they don't need the street drug anymore. So I don't know if that'll happen with me, but it's interesting timing in that I'm being given the boot from the mental health system to my GP. And yeah, it feels different. It felt all of a sudden like I just wanted to go and love everybody. And I wasn't afraid anymore of people. And also not being afraid of who others are. Like, I don't know. I guess that is a sign that the sense of otherness is still there. And then now it feels like if there are others, it's not really a problem. Because the power of love can meet anything. It doesn't have to fear a particular thing. So, I don't know, there could still be a fall easily. But we'll see. But it feels like I'm in my body. It doesn't feel like I'm localized in the head. It feels like I can feel my heart at the same time as I can feel my feet on the ground. Like I can feel my whole body at the same time. And maybe the exercise yesterday helped. I don't know. And it feels like I could just practice moving gracefully because I can move. I can move myself. Because I don't feel trapped. I did take 1,000 milligrams of tyrosine today because I had something to write. And my breathing feels really calm, and calm breathing is coming back. Interestingly enough, since the night or the day that I had the bit of a crisis, since then, calm breathing has been coming back. It's not 4 minutes a day, it's more like 15 to 50 minutes a day. I have been doing the Peter Smith relaxation audio the last 3 nights, and I'm not going to try and say, oh, I'm going to do it every day. I'm going to do it whenever I think of it, and I'm not even going to see or think, did I do it 100 days in a row like I'm supposed to? Because then I will stop at some point and then I just stop. Whereas if I don't think in terms of accumulation, I'll just keep doing it whenever I do. Because there is something to the relaxation response. Like I feel a lot more relaxed now, and I felt that response when I started doing that audio again. And maybe we can only heal when we're in the relaxation response. The autonomic nervous system. I really don't know. I'm trying to take note of this interesting phenomenon that's happening. And it's happened by being with the pain and not resisting it and getting to the point where one doesn't even call it pain anymore. It's just something happening in awareness, in the field of consciousness. And one is starting to identify more with the field of awareness than with the personal self and the personal body. And it's interesting because now in the field of awareness, the awareness is more aware of the body. Whereas before, it was more stuck in mind-made-up stories. And I realize the pain's not personal. But yeah, feeling my own heartbeat. I haven't felt that for a long time. That circular movement, it started when I was in California. I was in a really powerful space, like the environment was really powerful, and maybe I picked up on a healing vibe that stirs stuff up but also heals. I remember when I had a crisis last year in October, I could feel the vibe like in the lower area, like in my, like right in my base chakra area, and I could also feel it at some point in my like sacral chakra, like in the gut area. I haven't really felt it in the stomach, but I felt it in the heart. Not really in the throat, but I felt it in, now I feel it in the third eye. Maybe it needs to get to the top of the head, I don't know. I don't know if that's what they mean by kundalini or whatever, but I don't know what that is, but there's some kind of energy field that moves in a circle. And yeah, I've made a lot of notes lately, and I've had a lot of insights, but I can't really stand here in the middle of the forest and talk about them. Kind of need some kind of studious space. But yeah, I think reading those 2 chapters of Dr. David Hawkins' Healing and Recovery, and also his autobiography bit just at the end of the book, was really helpful, because it's how one approaches what's going on in consciousness and awareness. If one approaches it with fear, that results in certain things, or one can approach it with neutrality, one can approach it with unconditional love. And then one not only approaches one's small self with that, which then transforms the self, one approaches life with that energy. So I think it's really helpful to read that. There are some really helpful things to read and learn and study and revisit later on in the process, because I did a lot of studying before this all started years ago, which has helped me, but I didn't really restudy it. And then I think restudying it a little bit has helped. And yeah, the air smells really fresh. There's a sense that there's nothing to do, in a good way. Mosquito landing on my nose. That's fine, I'm neutral. Last night I slept pretty well, and I took 3/4 trazodone, 2 quetiapine, Benadryl and a half, and I didn't have to take the Zopicone. And I'm glad about that, because sleeping pills can be habit forming. So the less I can take them, the better. But they are good to take when I need to sleep and I can't. Because sleep is that which is going to keep me grounded in this supposedly physical reality. I'm really wondering how physical it is. It really appears to be physical, but when I woke up this morning, I was just laying there, and I was sort of scrunched in a bit of a fetal position with my legs twisted up, and I was just enjoying the sensation of having legs and breathing, and my body felt really relaxed and good. And I don't remember having any dreams last night. I don't know what trail I'm on. Guess it's the same trail, but it looks different. I know I've recognized that, but anyway, so yeah, I felt really good in my body, and I haven't had any of that pain yet again today. So maybe it's gone for now. I'm not saying that it's going to be gone forever. That would be a mistake to think that things can be changeless. But it's good timing because I think I'm going back home tomorrow, and I feel like a lot of that anger and hate that I was feeling in my body, I feel like it's gone. And I hope nothing happens to provoke it to come out. But I guess if it does, then I'll see that it's not totally gone. And maybe if it does come out, I don't even need to call it anger. Maybe I don't need to label it anything and then feel bad. If it comes out of emptiness, that's what happens. And being neutral about it could be that which helps to end it. And that was part of the practice I did in order to be with a lot of that physical pain I was feeling. Well, it was supposedly physical pain. And then it sort of changed in its nature and quality, and I realized that it could be that physical pain that was sort of giving me a sensation of my body, because maybe I was really detached from my body. So that physical pain could be consciousness coming back into the body, and it could even be the energy which helps to build more and new neural pathways in order to be able to contain all that energy. It could be painful to have access to all this energy coming at us when the body literally isn't designed to contain all that. So I'm wondering if part of this is the body changing in order to be able to embody consciousness and awareness and emptiness. Because when the body embodies the self, the body is used very partially. It's like it's being controlled by the strings of thought, and it's not really under direct biological control of what is necessary in this moment. It's sort of being dragged along by the strings of the past. I've written a lot down since I've been here, and I don't know if I shall write about it or talk about it or what. I wrote down the power of space, of empty space, because it's full of energy. So we're sort of fixated on the forms of life, but we don't appreciate the power of the empty space. And I think that's part of what I've realized in the last day, is that I feel less identified with the body and more as the empty space. And if I see myself in that way, and I see myself from that empty space, then a lot of these weird experiences I've had make a lot more sense. So yeah. And I'm wondering if being labeled and pathologized with a mental illness can be a path to awakening. And I wouldn't be the first person to say that. But I think the difference might be in seeing that the system is a temporary measure. It's not something that we don't need to fight it. Because what I'm seeing from what I've experienced in the last 2 years of going through 3 crisis events without the hospital is that I don't go to the hospital if I'm able to handle it myself. And it's really unpleasant, for sure, but that unpleasantness doesn't transform into manifesting as a whole mental health system rallying around me to try and help me through it. And we won't necessarily stop going to the mental health system until we realize the truth of who we are, which is emptiness. I don't know if that's absolutely true, but I listened to a talk by Rupert Spira last night. And I'm not a Rupert Spira person, but I did listen to a few of his talks while I was here. And I think even though I didn't really fully get it, because I'm not familiar with his teachings and the languaging, I think it helped in that zooming out and being not identified, but understanding that one is awareness, which is emptiness. So when one zooms out and sees that one is emptiness and awareness, one can be aware of what's going on in awareness without being attached to it. And as more energy is pulled into the emptiness of awareness, the energy of what's going on in the body, supposedly, which he explains can only be experienced through the mind, so then in that way we don't even know what's happening to the body. So I felt like it was in pain, but when I was able to zoom out, when you zoom out and you're in the perspective of emptiness, everything dissolves into that emptiness because it's not being fueled by identification, by wanting it to not be. So being in the emptiness, one is sort of neutral. So approaching that experience and that's where Dr. David Hawkins' work comes in, approaching that experience in the body, in the mind, in consciousness, in awareness, those are the layers that Rupert Spira talks about, from neutrality, that is a higher level, as the emptiness of neutrality, that's a higher level of consciousness than approaching it as fear. So if I feel like my body's in pain and I'm afraid of it, that's a lower energy state than if I'm neutral. And then there's higher energy states like, love and things like that. So if one can be with it with love, one can actually transmute more of what is apparently being experienced in the body into nothingness, into the empty space. It goes into the empty space as opposed to going into fueling fear of the experience. So if I'm neutral about it, I'll probably lay there and wait it out for quite a long period of time. But if I'm afraid of it, I'm going to get up and I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to run around doing all sorts of things to try to escape it. I'm going to call the ambulance, And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. If one needs to do that, do it 100%. But getting to a place where we can transmute that is pretty powerful. And I'm not saying I'm done transmuting. I think I still have a lot more bodily pain to go through, especially because I've been on medications for so many years. So I think there's a lot more to transmute, but I don't know. I don't think now is the time. I think when my body has more housing, proper housing, after I get back from California, then that might be a time to work to be off the medications and transmute all of that accumulated pain, or whatever it is, energy, into consciousness, into emptiness. I think that sensation is there partly to awaken the body. But when we're afraid of it, we awaken the mental health system. We give our power to the mental health system when we have the power in consciousness. And that's something that was interesting. These couple chapters in Dr. David Hawkins' book, I should share that. I think I'm going to start blogging more, because I don't think I can write a book, and I really just want people to suffer less. I don't really care about money or whatever. So yeah, I think sharing this process could be helpful. But I guess I feel a little bit wary because I'm not fully through the process, and I really don't know. That's the thing, when one is in this kind of space of emptiness and not knowing and not having thought, one feels very hesitant and unsure. That's sort of one's approach to life. One's not approaching it from a perspective of knowing how to do everything. I know this and I know that, and these are my opinions. One doesn't really have any opinions, so I think one of the troubles is that we're looking for cause and blame. And the world is really, there's no cause to it. And so when we start looking for causes, and then if we think we know the cause, then we think we know the solution. So to be with it without causality is huge. To just be with the sensation without thinking this is the cause. You know, if I think, oh, my mental illness is the cause, then I start to seek out help from the mental health system. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I think it's a temporary measure. But I think we can start to learn to graduate from that. And instead of thinking they did me wrong, they caused whatever, then I don't know. I think the more of us that learn how to deal with this, then we can say, hey, there's another way, and just do that other way, and then the other thing sort of dies out, but it's there for the people who need it. Because there are a lot of people that feel they're helped by it. And perhaps they are, and I think that I was helped by it, even though there was a lot of suffering. I'm still being helped by it because there's the meds, you know. I'm very thankful that I can take something to knock me out and sleep, because otherwise I go into a different world and my body no longer exists in this one that is considered to be linear, even though it's not. So, you know, basically a lot of this stems from a mistaken identity. We don't know who we are, and we also think things are Newtonian. And when we start to see things happening in a way that isn't Newtonian, we get really scared. And we scare people around us because they don't want to see it. Because it's something that you can't believe in. And the Newtonian way is based on belief. And so what happens is actually impossible, because it's not Newtonian. So it's not possible. So anyway, I'm gonna go now.